Good morning. My name is Sean Collins. I'm going to be giving the morning message this morning. I'm lighting my candle now. If you wish, you can light a candle and join me on this snowy morning. This week we're talking about a balance in our lives between desolation and consolation, consolation and desolation, if you will. I am reminded of a poem or a passage by Mahatma Gandhi called The Path. I know the path. It is straight and narrow. It is like the edge of a sword. I rejoice to walk on it. I weep when I slip. God's word is, he who strives never perishes. I have implicit faith in that promise. Though, therefore, from my weakness I fail 1,000 times, I shall not lose faith. I know that only some of us comprise our faith in that of God. If we're humanists, the faith, if you want to call it that, is more in our understanding of our will and our place in this world. But I do believe that there is some wisdom there. I think that I have been under the assertion of a certain amount of balance. It's like I'm carrying a big bowl of liquid that is sloshing when I don't find the right balance. And if I drink too much of it and desolation, then I get a little drunk, if you want, and I'm more prone to spilling it. So there's always a spike of desolation in everything. I think everything that we do, because not everything is filled with all hope and joy. There's also a bit of, we desecrate our lives with when we lose hope, and that's easy to do, and that's necessary to understand the darkness that is always invoking our intentions with something that is not so pure, I suppose. I think the context of this situation that I described, with the bowl, is framed against a backdrop of things that we can't control, and we can take from those things what we need. We're not always making the best choices. I admit I don't. But I think that if we keep trying to make the best choices and we keep exploring the empathy of other people, even as a wounded healer in my case, then we understand the context better and can make better choices. What choices am I talking about? Well, Paul, in his epistle, said that consolation has balance with desolation always, because we aren't always making the best choices. We're not perfect. And desolation is actually useful because it helps us discern the best choices that we have at our disposal. Now, he said that there was love, but in balance with that consolation is hate, and joy with sorrow, peace with anxiety, patience with impatience, kindness with rudeness, goodness with evil, faithfulness with unfaithfulness, gentleness with harshness, and self-control with an undisciplined balance. I think it's important that we have choices, but there's choices out there, things to choose from, because we are, in essence, still in the wilderness and the wildness that our evolution has wrought. And if it weren't the case, I believe we might be akin to be in a room, I suppose, just stuck with ourselves, isolated. But the fact there are choices means that there's beauty. As one example of balance, Benjamin Alice Senias says, the heart can get really cold if all you've known is winter. And Kristen Armstrong is another choice for here. Circumstances in life often take us places that we never intended to go. We visit some places of beauty and others of pain and desolation. Next, I'm going to choose a selection from our Touchstones journal called Faith and Theology from Desolation to Consolation. Sometimes the movement is like a pendulum, back and forth, from consolation to desolation. It does raise the question, which comes first? And the answer is, well, it depends. We are indeed fortunate if our first acquaintance was with consolation, for then we know what we are trying to get back to when we find ourselves mired in desolation. How sad to be born into desolation, as has been the case for too many children in war-torn countries, born into abject poverty, born with profound health issues, children who have never known the blessings of consolation. May the power of their innocence allow them to experience the consolation in ways that would be invisible to anyone else. There are other rhythms. We may enjoy long stretches of consolation interspersed by momentary desolation. Or it may be that the despair of desolation is a constant, only occasionally disrupted by the joy of consolation. It may even be that while largely being content, there is this unacknowledged substrate of desolation of which we are only vaguely aware. Something is wrong, but it is not wrong enough to address in any meaningful way. It may even be that we have no awareness that anything is wrong. The Danish theologian Søren Kierkegaard called this unconscious despair. This polarity of desolation and consolation is largely confined to the soul and the emotions, although it clearly can have intellectual and physical implications. Unitarian Universalist minister Robert Fulghum wrote in a chapter in the book Handbook for the Soul, "I must begin by confessing that soul is a word I rarely use." He continues, "Soul is found in the quality of what I am doing, and if my activities have a sense of truth and integrity, if they are deep in meaning, then they are rich in soul, and so am I. Thus for me, nourishing the soul means making sure I attend to those things that give me my life richness and depth of meaning." While the 16th century founder of the Society of Jesuits, Saint Ignatius, created his spiritual exercises to lead people to God and a state of consolation, Fulghum offers us a meaningful goal for discernment. When we are in a state of desolation, Fulghum would likely agree that the result is our life is impoverished, that we exist on the surface of life devoid of purpose, direction, or meaning. Fulghum concludes, "I guess the key questions to ask are, what do you expect out of life? And what will you settle for? I expect that this life will go well if I simply pay attention to the positives as well as the negatives of the mixture that is in me and is in the rest of the world. And if I focus on my soul, if I allow it to speak to me, and if I listen to it carefully, then it is I who am nourished at the center of my being." Listening to the soul is one way of defining discernment. Margaret Silf suggests that St. Ignatius discovered within himself, when he paid attention, an inner compass. The inner compass, he writes, was able to reveal to him which movements within him were capable of engaging his deepest vital energy, and which was leading him only to fleeting satisfactions that left him unchanged and unfulfilled. Listening? Socrates said that the unexamined life is not worth living. We call it reflection, contemplation, meditation, prayer. It does not matter which, all of these can be about the same thing, listening to your life. Parker Palmer famously said, "Before you tell your life what you intend to do with it, listen for what it intends to do with you. Before you tell your life what truths and values you have decided to live up to, let your life tell you what truths you embody, what values you represent." Dante wrote of the dark wood in midlife in which he found himself lost. The 16th century Spanish mystic St. John of the Cross wrote of the dark night of the soul, which he described as a long period of unknowing, loss, and despair. Analogies for desolation include desert and darkness. Unitarian Universalist minister Stephen Schick writes, "Spirit of the coming darkness, forgive me for not knowing, for welcoming your return. I have learned to fear you, remembering how you once pushed joy out of my soul, and how once you blinded me as I traveled a winding road. The truth is, I don't trust or understand you, and I quickly curse you. Unfortunately, there's no way around the darkness. Take courage and proceed with sure confidence that consolation is within reach." There are different ways of listening to the soul. Parker Palmer has developed a process called circles of trust. These circles are led by trained facilitators. Another is simply talking with a spiritual friend, someone who you trust that has the ability to listen without judgment, ask questions for clarification, allows for silence as appropriate, and who has no need to fix you. Since such people are rare, you may want to seek out a spiritual director who can facilitate an ongoing guided conversation. Some spiritual directors provide direction for a group. Finally, you may want to consider listening to your soul through the practice of daily examen as follows. Examen of consciousness is a practice that encourages you to bring the character of your day into greater awareness. It involves both remembering and reflection, and it has several parts. One, how has that which is most precious and profound been active in your life during the day? We may call this God, our ultimate concern, our values, love, or whatever else conveys for us a sense of ultimacy. Call to mind the thoughts, feelings, and actions that seem to stand out the most. How did you attend to life during the day, and how did you respond? The examen also asks us to consider the nature of our relationship during this day with ourselves and with others, and we are invited without apology or defense to say what it truly is in us, that it is truly in us. The point of this is neither to justify nor excuse our actions on the one hand, nor to beat ourselves up for what we have done or failed to do on the other. It is an exercise in self-knowledge. Saint Teresa of Avila wrote, "This path of self-knowledge must never be abandoned, nor is there on this journey a soul so much a giant that it has no need to return to the stage of an infant." The second part is a meditation for prayer of aspiration. In light of what the day has been, what do we aspire for tomorrow? What in us or in our relationship with others needs attention or healing? Hold these things in your heart for a few minutes. Thirdly, capture the most striking points in your daily examen in your journal. This can be just simple notations or a more extended dialogue with yourself, with others, and or with the precious and profound. It is a way of turning inward. Virginia Stem Owens wrote, "Like a lathe, a journal forces us inward, into the heart of the wood." As we write, our thoughts and reflections take a more concrete form. They are also a trail of breadcrumbs that we can trace backward to see themes emerging on our reflections, concerns that persist, or the process by which some important issues were resolved over time. If it makes sense, in the writing, with an aspiration that has arisen out of your reflection on the day. So some tips for the examen. Do it daily at the same time. Spend at least 20 minutes. 1/2 on steps on 1 and 2, and 1/2 on steps 3, journaling. All 3 steps can involve writing if you wish. Use free association and suspend judgment. Note the significant events of the day and ask questions of life. Reflect on relationships with self, others, divine. Was there a theme to that day? At least once a week, go back and read through what you have written to make you more aware of the shape of your journey. Unitarian Universalist minister Rob Hardy's offers the following questions for consideration. What were the first things I felt when I woke up? What were my first actions? Did I begin the day centered or not? What work did I do to this day? Was it fulfilled? Did it contribute to the purpose that I have identified for my life? With whom did I interact? Spouse, partner, children, family, friends, co-workers, and strangers. Did I greet them as a child of hope, God? Did I treat them as possessing inherent worth and dignity? Or did I see them as a means to an end? Where did I encounter the holy today? And what made me feel cut off from the holy? Where did I feel most alive, most myself? Where did I lack integrity? How do I feel now the day is over? And what lessons did I learn from this day? And what might I do differently tomorrow? I think Parker Palmer's Circles of Trust is a methodology that I am interested in pursuing. But this is just an introduction, and I don't expect you to remember all of that. Real grief is not healed by time, and it is false to think that the passing of time will slowly make us forget and take away our pain. I would want to console you, but not by suggesting that time will take away your pain. I would not only be telling a lie, I would be diminishing the importance of life and underestimating the depth of your grief. If time does anything, it deepens our grief. The pain we are now experiencing shows us how deep, full, intimate, and all-pervasive love was. I want to comfort and console you, but not in a way that covers up real pain and avoids all wounds. Consolation and comfort are to be found where our wounds hurt most. Henry J.M. Newern. In closing, I will simply add Reverend Philip R. Giles' words, "May the quality of our lives be our benediction and a blessing to all we touch." Thanks for joining us.